So who am I? I could kind of say I'm a creative director or a writer and stuff. What I'd like to say is my love is Deborah. My joy is 4 boys. My running is 3 miles a day. My dress is a kilt. And my first calling was the priesthood. So that's a very quick way of kind of saying who I am. My favorite font is obviously Gil, because of Eric Gill. A couple of reasons. He was a converted Catholic as well. That's a whole other really interesting thing. Secondly, a lot of his work is on Bush House, a lot of his sculptures and lettering and stuff. And Eric, because it's not so much the font, because the font is a little bit dated now. You see it a lot now, stay calm and all that nonsense all over America, but nobody's using the right font. And then, because his font was so successful, he actually stole his font from a font called Johnston. And Johnston became Johnston Railway. And Johnston Railway is what you see on the London Underground. And he stole Gil from that. Now, if you look at people like Picasso and Steve Jobs, they said in their lives, they literally said, what can I steal? We politely say, how can we be influenced? No. So Gil was very much of that school as to what can I steal. So the beauty of doing a Georgian Square, for example, is I've got houses all around me to copy. So I can look even better. I'll put that piece in there. So you can't kind of go wrong. That's the beauty of it. Jobs said that, if you steal correctly, you can't go wrong. And he's right. So you can see he was like a Renaissance man for me. He was a painter, sculptor. And I also have my absolutely lovely lady, Deborah, bought me a W that he made and imprinted only once, and I have that at home as an imprint. And and that lettering became the influence for Perpetua, which was from his daughter, which was a serif font. And there's a couple of art directors in London to this day will only design in Perpetua, nothing else. So one of the things you should try doing is every time you design something now, try and pick one font and make yourself. Because sometimes we kind of use serif because we want to be a little bit more gentle or delicate, and sans because we want to be a little bit more, modern. But try using one font for everything. I did it for 6 months at Saatchi until Charles Saatchi said he'd had enough. If he saw one more layout in it. And in those days we had to trace everything, by the way, there was no computer. We traced out whole, full page ads like this in Perpetua headlines and 14-point text and all that kind of stuff. We would have to trace out everything. And we would be judged on that as to whether or not the client could see it or not, because the secret then was, it was like the pre-Mac, people could visually see what the ad was going to look like. But that's why Gil was a huge impression on me, his religion, his sense of understanding people and how people interacted with things, and then Bush House, United Nations, and his influence from the Catechism as well in the Bible for typography. It's the hardest damn question in the world, and all I can give you is one word: curiosity. That's it in a nutshell for me. Curiosity is the foundation of everything. And if you don't, God, I want to be careful now. It's not the case that everybody has it or doesn't have it, because I think you can light the fuse. I think it's all sitting there for you. But if you're not curious about why am I wearing a T-shirt that says the future is female, that's an issue for me from a curious perspective. Why is he wearing a 6th generation fake iWatch? It's actually an iPod. If you're not asking those questions, because I've asked it about everyone here while I was sitting here, I'm like, I wonder what, if I were to I call people font by names, it's awful. It's really bad. So eventually, if I were to know you more, I'd give you all a font name. But that's kind of, curiosity is, look at everything, you know what I mean?
No, I think you're right. I think to a certain extent you can find creativity in all elements, and I think that's to a certain extent part of what these Mentor Mundos are about. It's about a little bit of escape to generate curiosity and creativity.
I think the biggest change I've seen is what I call kleptomania copying. Seems to be a big thing in the last 5 years. So I see the same piece recycled several times by different designers. And I don't know why that's happening. I'm talking about different aspects of America. So what I call kleptomania, like everybody's just grabbing the same thing and then going, wow, I'm going to do that. And that's happened a lot in the last 5 years. It's because of kleptomania where clients, I think more work has been turned down in the last 5 years than anything I've seen previously. Just a discussion I was having with a friend in New York. And that's because clients feel they've seen it and heard it before. And I think there's a truth to that. And then that all leads into ideation. If you don't have an idea, I don't know what else you can do but go copy. Or you know how a client may say sometimes, I saw this ad for, or I saw this great piece of social media, or I saw this great something, I want that. And then you're creatively forced down the road to do that. And that's a hard thing to argue because you're here primarily to make the client's business better and also to keep the client happy. And when the client starts doing that, it depends on the relationship as to whether or not you can push back or not. When there are no ideas, you try to find something that is an idea and repeat it. But just kleptomania, what I call stealing, I think is the biggest issue.
The other thing as well that I find really interesting in regards to kind of kleptomania is just the ability to collaborate. I think when you collaborate, there's other people to keep you in check and say, well, I've seen that before.
Mentors are important, but mentoring has kind of become a little bit of a generic word. So mentoring to me is very simple. How can I help you? Done. Not about what can you do for me, not what am I going to get out of it. How can I help you at a very basic level? And if you think about professors in schools and things, I wish they were called mentors instead of professors, because professors have to teach a curriculum, and a curriculum is not mentoring to me. It's quite simply going through the act of, all right, today we're going to talk about color theory. Tomorrow we're going to talk about typography. That's not mentoring. I've had several mentors. One of my biggest mentors was Father Everard, I guess. When I was a trainee priest, and I was going through all this conflict and I'm not trying to affect anybody. You have to be careful here. I was going through all this conflict on being a missionary. That's what I was going to do, go to Africa, and I saw all these big families of 20 people, and my mother came from a family of 20. 3 sets of twins, killed my grandmother. I thought, we got to do something. So he was a great mentor in getting me to understand church thinking, but allowing me, and this is the important thing in mentoring, allowing me to retain my sensibility. That's the big thing I wanted to get to. So he didn't try and change my view on birth control. He didn't try and change my view on the world. What he said was, here's how I would think about it. Here's what the church says. So if we're talking in work, here's what 83 says, right? This is what 83 is about. And here's what you're about. And then through that collaboration, the Father and I were collaborating. We weren't fighting. We weren't saying you're wrong. We never even brought that subject. And we had several conversations on it. And even when I said, I don't think I can stay, his whole thought was, but you'll leave a better person. If you feel that you've left a better person, so what have you learned and not learned? And so mentoring is very important that you leave the other person with their perspective. Teaching to me is done too much. I'm going to change your opinion about typography, and here's why. Not I'm going to inspire you through my thoughts about typography. So an example of mentoring in typography to me was taking out the master's class on art direction at BCU at 8 o'clock at night with a torchlight down an alleyway that I knew had a lot of litter, and everybody wearing very heavy gloves and shining a light on type. And they all came back thinking about typography. In point of fact, one of them just emailed me 10 years later, last week, about, I still remember that night you took us down this alley, and you know what I mean? So my point about mentoring is you have to be a demonstrator. You have to be somebody who is willing to go do something. So mentoring is about thinking and doing. So sitting there pontificating in a classroom is not the answer. You have to disturb that with, a trip out or bring something in. So for example, the way we mentored IBM in the early days of trying to make that account better was one day I brought an Armani suit in. And I talked to the tailor in the store. I'll never forget it. I thought he was just going to let me have it for a deposit. He's like, no, I want $2,000. I'm like, holy cow. All right, I've got the company Amex card. Here we go. For which I got yelled at later, but that's okay. And he gave me some pointers. And so when we opened the jacket, I had all these little pointers inside on yellow sticky notes. And it just talked about the stitching, and it talked about the lining, and it talked about the cotton. It talked about the person wearing it. That's mentoring to me, because you're kind of immersing yourself in it rather than just sitting on the surface of it. Does that make sense? So, and then the other person was obviously Charles Saatchi, huge influence. I might sound like I had a meeting with him every other day. I didn't, but every major campaign you had to take to Charles. And it wasn't about taking to Charles for his approval, you had to go sell it. And I remember on another account, going in there, it was a black and white whiskey. I went in, I'm pontificating, and Charles is sitting there with some other people, and I didn't realize one of them was a client. And he goes, so you're the account guy now, Pete? And I go, no. He said, so where's the account guy? And the account guy was the young guy behind me. And it was so arrogant of me, because I thought he was younger and I was more experienced. I'd only been 2 years art directing, but who cares? And he was like 5 years younger than me, and I demolished this guy. So the other part of mentoring is, let other people go first. Let other people have the space. That's what good mentoring is. So, Charles Saatchi, I was there for 2 years, so I was lucky. I probably had a meeting a month with him. And then he took me into meetings. I was the kind of graphic designer at Saatchi's for some reason. So when clients were like, we're redoing our packaging, would you go in and give your 10 cents? I was like, holy cow, I don't want to be doing that, but okay. So I was very lucky that way, and then he got me onto teaching. I was given a week off in those 2 weeks, well actually 3 weeks off in those 2 years, like sabbatical, just to go teach. And like I said, anybody who walked in and said, I want an interview, you got me no matter how high or how low you were. So, and there's also what I call reverse mentoring. What are you learning? What are you getting? But I think mentoring has become a little bit cookie cutter and so on. And it should also drive you to curiosity, like I said earlier. I want you to be curious. After I've spoken to you, I want you to be curious. Not about me and so much that, but oh my God, what haven't I done? What haven't I done? Like I said, I had this really bad scenario with the British Airways account guy. He was actually the guy running the whole business around the world for bloody millions in media. And I got so angry with him, I tore my layouts up, kicked his door in with glass. I was mad. It was to this day, I still believe it was a great idea. But as Saatchi said, when he walks into a meeting, in those days, he didn't go along to every meeting. He would go. And the point is that if the account guy doesn't believe in what you're selling, you're done. And here's why. Even today, let's say you go in there and you present it, and your account guy's like, you go, Pete, you do what you want to do, and supports you, right? The client's not going to call you, the creative. He's not going to go, unless you're the creative director, he's not going to call you and go, he's going to call the account guy. And client relationships are like any relationship between people, right? You can tell down the phone if something's not right. So if the account guy's not up there going, I'm in, I'm defending this work, the creative did great work, he will slip. And that's what happened on the British Airways thing. We didn't, what we had done was we had created these prayers from Arabic writing. And it was the first flights BA were doing in first class, and we wanted to do these prayer cards. And because he didn't fully understand what we were doing and the whole background, and because we were so arrogant, myself and my writer, by the way, who was American, I'm just throwing her under the bus now. I had to pay for the door. I got 1 week's pay taken off me, and I was made to apologize to the whole BA account team. And it was the biggest lesson of my life. And that's when I began to realize that particularly when I went to work in the States where you're working on big global businesses, you know, make the account guy your best friend. So when was the last time you bought him lunch? When was the last time you asked, what do you think? When was the last time you said, you know, you weren't happy with that, can you tell me why? How can I make you feel more comfortable with me and my thinking? And we just don't do it enough, we just don't. You know, because we're busy or whatever. And when was the last time we actually even said, you know, left something on their desk like thank you? You know what I mean? And that's why, because, and the other thing about account guys is that we, and I don't mean 83, but there's a lot of places that have just pushed them aside. And all they are now is balancing the books, you know, have we overspent? Is our media buy right? Is my expenses good? And all that kind of stuff. And they can get you out of so much trouble. I mean, I just love them. I mean, but I learned the hard way. I mean, a really hard way. And I'm lucky I didn't get fired, especially for breaking a glass, which actually I didn't mean to do. He just slammed the door and my argument was, my foot was there, Mr. Saatchi. But, and he threw me out of his office, and rightly so, but you know, I'm forever grateful to Saatchi's because I went on years later to work for them freelance. I went on to work with other people who left Saatchi's, and it was it's a tremendous school. I think a lot of people who worked at Saatchi's would say that it was a school. I hope you guys who are here look back at this and see this as a place of, quite simply a place of learning. You know what I mean? If you can do that, and then the brilliant thing about that is if you can then go out there and say that, then suddenly this has more credibility. You know, it's like social media, you say it to somebody else and off it goes.
First of all, just thank you, a huge thank you. A, for being our guinea pig, and B, for your creative input today. It was absolutely fantastic.